They say history is a straight line, a path carved through time. From caves to cities, from fire to fiber optics. But what if that line isn't so straight? What if it's a circle? A spiral? Or worse, a cycle of rise and erasure? Beneath our feet, under fields, forests, deserts, oceans, there are cities. Not ruins. Not shattered stones or broken bones. But entire cities. Some are known. Most are not. And some were never supposed to be found. These are not the cities of our textbooks. Not Athens or Babylon. Not Rome or Carthage. These are the ones that came before. The ones erased. The ones that refused to die. What if under modern capitals lie older capitals? And under those, something else entirely? We have long spoken of Atlantis, of Lemuria, of Hyperborea. Legends, myths, fairy tales. Until someone finds a wall. Until sonar hits a shape beneath the sea. Until a satellite reveals a square, too perfect to be natural. Buried beneath the Amazon. Or frozen under Antarctica. Then legend becomes possibility. And myth becomes memory. There are temples beneath Mexico that predate the Aztecs. Roads beneath the Amazon that shouldn't exist. Stone circles beneath the Sahara that defy explanation. We are told these were natural. Coincidence. Misinterpretation. But what if they weren't? What if entire civilizations were built, then buried? Not by time, but by intent. What if the earth is not just our home, but our archive? And somewhere, deep within that archive, are the stories that never made it to history books. The stories of the cities that never died. Civilizations that rose not once, but many times. Each time reaching heights we still don't understand. And each time, disappearing. Not through war. Not through decay. But through silence. Who are they? Where did they go? And why is so little said about them? Perhaps because they challenge the story. The one we're told in classrooms and documentaries. That we are the pinnacle. That we are the first. That no one before us could have built what we have. But the stones say otherwise. The ruins speak. If only we would listen. In Turkey, Göbekli Tepe rewrote what we thought we knew. In Peru, the megaliths of Sacsayhuaman laugh at modern tools. In India, submerged cities whisper of lost empires. And then there's what we don't speak of. The discoveries sealed away. The artifacts pulled from the ground and never shown again. The dig sites shut down overnight. The whistleblowers silenced. Because these cities aren't just ruins. They're questions. Dangerous ones. Questions about time, about memory, about who we really are. If a city beneath the ice tells us someone was here 20,000 years ago. With math. With astronomy. With architecture. Then who are we? What are we continuing? Or forgetting? The past may not be behind us. It may be beneath us. And as ice melts, forests thin, and deserts shift, the past rises. Brick by brick. Vault by vault. Ghost by ghost. This is not about ghosts in the supernatural sense, but ghost civilizations. Ghost cities. Echoes of us, before us. And perhaps, they are not entirely gone. Perhaps some left warnings. Maps. Monoliths. Perhaps they knew the cycle would return. That we would rise again, and forget again. But not all memory fades. some is carved into stone, some into myth, and some is waiting to be unearthed. This is the story of those cities. Not of how they ended, but how they survived. Not of death, but of memory. Because maybe the greatest secret of history is that it never really ends. It only waits to be remembered. Beneath the cities we know lie the cities we've forgotten, and some we never knew existed at all. They say time erases everything, but in truth, time just buries it. And under the noise of modern life, under concrete and steel, the past sleeps. Not in books, not in museums, but in stone, in tunnels, in cryptic ruins whispered about by old maps and half-remembered legends. This chapter isn't just about cities. It's about the bones of civilizations, the echo chambers of lost knowledge, the stories built over, then sealed away. Let's begin not with myth, but with a city we walk over every day. Rome, the eternal city. But the Rome we know today is built atop the bones of the Rome that once was. Beneath its streets lie layers, catacombs, forums, temples, hidden in plain sight. And deeper still are fragments of a civilization that predates even Rome. The Etruscans. Their language still unsolved. Their origin debated. What if the Romans didn't build atop empty earth, but over something they chose not to understand? In 1930, workers beneath a Roman street uncovered a strange room, octagonal, with symbols that matched no known culture. The discovery? Sealed. Forgotten. No photographs released. Why? Because buried cities aren't always ruins. Sometimes, they're vaults. Locked for a reason. Now cross the Mediterranean. Cairo. The city of 1,000 minarets. And 1,000 foundations. Because Cairo is layered. And beneath its mosques and markets lie older cities. Some say, older than Egypt itself. In 2017, a team drilling beneath old Cairo struck something hard. Not rock, but a dome. Stone, perfectly smooth. When they returned the next day, it was gone. Not stolen. Vanished. Official records list the dig as inconclusive. Locals tell a different story, of a humming sound. Then silence. They say the dome was not part of this world. Coincidence? Or warning? Now travel to Turkey. To Derinkuyu. A city, beneath a city. Carved into volcanic rock. 18 levels deep. Capable of housing 20,000 people. Complete with ventilation shafts. Schools. Wineries. This was no bunker. It was a functioning, planned metropolis. Underground. But here's the question that keeps archaeologists awake at night. Why? Why would a civilization dig a city into the earth when they already had the land above? Protection from invaders? Maybe. But the scale, the complexity, suggests something else. What if it wasn't built because of the surface? What if it was built instead of it? And Derinkuyu isn't alone. Dozens of underground cities have been found in Cappadocia. Some, connected by miles of tunnels. A subterranean network. As if the surface was never the goal. Some researchers whisper of ancient warnings. Of surface cataclysms. Of visitors from above or below. And the people? They listened. They went underground. Then there's Edinburgh. Beneath the Scottish capital lies Mary King's Close, a network of alleyways sealed during the plague. Forgotten until centuries later, when renovations revealed bricked-up streets, dusty rooms still set with tables, as if the people never left, just disappeared. Some say the spirits still linger. Others say the city was buried for reasons never written down. What if Mary King's Close wasn't an accident, but a memory of an older habit to hide what couldn't be explained? Let's descend now to South America. Peru. Cusco, the Inca capital. Beneath it, stonework that predates the Incas. Perfect joints. No mortar. So precisely cut, modern tools can't replicate them. These stones were old when the Incas found them. Who built them? We don't know. In 2012, local construction crews found a staircase beneath Cusco. It led to a chamber. Inside, symbols not Incan, not Spanish, but something else. Access was denied. Site closed. Because some cities are not ruins. They are messages. Now let's return home. To modern cities. New York. London. Paris. Cities that rise, while something older sleeps below. In Manhattan, old subway maps reveal tunnels that don't go anywhere. No stations. No exits. No record. In London, there are whispers of Roman roads that lead into walls. Sealed doors and basements. Sounds heard at night. Paris has its catacombs. Everyone knows the bones, but few speak of the rooms found beyond the bones. Unmapped. Unclaimed. In 2004, police found an underground cinema beneath the Trocadero. Chairs. Projectors. Power. And a sign, "Do not try to find us." Who were they? What did they know? You see, cities never truly die. They layer. Like palimpsests. Each generation writes over the last. But the ink bleeds through. And in rare moments, the past flickers through the cracks in the present. A sudden sinkhole. A construction site that uncovers a stairway. A tunnel that echoes too long. These are not just coincidences. They are ruptures. Tiny ruptures in the illusion of modernity. Because beneath us, still beating, are the hearts of cities that never truly died. And if we dare to descend, if we follow the corridors and whispers, we may not just find stone and silence. We may find memory. History unedited. And the question that haunts us all. If they built so deep, so carefully, what were they hiding from? Or worse, what were they hiding? Ruins don't just crumble. They whisper. And if you listen closely enough, they speak of things we were never meant to hear. We call them monuments, temples, shrines. But maybe they are something else entirely. Not tributes to gods, but signatures, seals, markers of something once agreed upon and then buried in myth. Let's begin in Baalbek, Lebanon, the Temple of Jupiter. Massive stone blocks, the trilithon, each weighing over 800 tons. Positioned with such precision that modern cranes struggle to explain their placement. But here's what they don't teach. Under the temple lie foundations older than Rome, older than any known civilization in the region. And no one knows who laid them. Local legend speaks of the Watchers, beings from the sky, Not angels. Not demons. But something in between. What if these foundations weren't just for worship? What if they were part of a pact? A landing site? A gate? A message? Now to India. To Ellora. Carved from a single mountainside, not built, but removed. The Kailasa Temple. A structure so vast, it would take modern teams decades to complete. But ancient texts say it was built in a single night. By divine architects. Ridiculous? Or record of a forgotten technology? One that moves stone as if it were air. Or sound. Or thought. Some researchers propose sonic levitation, using frequencies to lift and shape matter. Once myth. Now, a frontier in quantum study. If that's true, then Ellora is not just a temple. It's a fossil of science we can no longer name. Now let's move north. To the Altai Mountains. There, scattered in ice and granite, are megalithic stones laid in impossible patterns. Caves sealed not by time, but by design. With doors that seem to respond only to resonance. Like instruments. Ancient Siberian myths speak of giants who sang to stone. Not poetry. Control. Is it possible that these ruins were never abandoned? That they await something? Or someone? Back west, in Ireland. Newgrange. Older than Stonehenge. Older than the pyramids. On the winter solstice, sunlight enters a single opening and illuminates the inner chamber for exactly 17 minutes. Not 18. Not 16. Why? Some say it was a calendar. Others, a ritual site. But one theory rarely spoken aloud. It was a code. An activation. The spiral patterns carved into stone? Not decoration. Data. Coordinates. And the chamber itself. A kind of vault. But what was stored there? And why was it sealed with such precision? Let's go deeper. Göbekli Tepe. Again. We touched it in chapter 1. But now we return. Because its builders didn't just create a place of worship. They buried it. Intentionally. Layer by layer. Stone by stone. Why? To preserve? To protect? Or to prevent? Was Göbekli Tepe a warning? Some scholars believe the animal carvings represent constellations, and that the entire structure is an astronomical clock, marking a cycle, a return. What returns? They don't say, because no one wants to speak the word. Event. Let's shift continents. To Pumapunku, Bolivia. Stones with laser-like cuts. Interlocking blocks like 3D puzzles. No mortar. No explanation. Mainstream archaeology says the site is 1,500 years old. But erosion patterns suggest something older. Much older. The Tawanaka people said the gods descended from the sky and taught their ancestors to build. And when their work was done, they left. But left what? These structures. These impossible geometries. Could they be remnants of something not made for us? Not by us? And if so, did we inherit a world we didn't fully understand? Now to Cambodia. Angkor Wat. A city of stone in the jungle. Built with cosmic alignment. Designed to mirror the constellation Draco. Why a dragon? Why that dragon? In local mythology, the Naga, serpent beings, ruled the earth before humans. Angkor Wat, was said to be a gift from them. A contract between humans and the Serpent Kings. What if these stories are not myths, but misunderstood records? And the carvings, terms of an agreement. A deal between species. Forgotten only because someone wanted us to forget. Even more haunting. The layout of Angkor isn't just stellar. It resembles a circuit. A flow. Was Angkor a temple? Or a machine? Let's pause here. Notice the pattern? Ruins. Aligned with stars. Carved with symbols. Built with precision. Buried. Or broken. But never explained. What if these are not ruins at all? What if they're interfaces? Terminals. Where once, someone or something made contact. And the languages? The sigils? The impossible math? All that remains of the conversation. Or worse, the contract. Because if that's true, if these monuments are the remnants of deals made in prehistory, then what was promised? What was traded? And what happens when it comes due? The earth forgets nothing. It merely waits. And sometimes, it remembers in fire. We tell ourselves the past was peaceful. Slow. Linear. A march from caves to cities, from sticks to satellites. But this is a myth. Because buried in the bones of our planet are scars. Wounds deep enough to erase entire civilizations. Let's start with the Younger Dryas. 12,800 years ago. A sudden return to Ice Age conditions. Glaciers surged. Temperatures plummeted. And then, fire. In North America, a layer of black carbon, nanodiamonds, and melted glass. This isn't theory, it's physical evidence. To some, it's the result of a comet impact. To others, a cosmic reset. And buried beneath that layer? Ruins. In places we were told were never settled. In depths that contradict the timeline of human civilization. Sites like Göbekli Tepe survive just beyond the event horizon. But what didn't? How many temples, libraries, entire cultures, were incinerated, then frozen, then lost? And more importantly, what were they trying to preserve? Because right before the Younger Dryas, there was a burst of knowledge, of construction, of alignment. Cities built on ley lines. Structures mirroring the stars. Calendars tracking cosmic rhythms we barely understand today. As if they knew something was coming. And then, silence. Let's go to the Andes. Lake Titicaca. Stories tell of an ancient city beneath the water. Built by a race that escaped the fire above. The Uros people, who live on floating islands, say their ancestors made a pact with the gods of the sky and water. A contract. To be preserved, if they agreed to forget. Forget what? Some say the original city wasn't just drowned. It was sunk. Deliberately. Not to destroy it, but to protect what lay inside. Artifacts. Knowledge. Perhaps a library of stone. Next, we go to the Sahara. Yes, the desert. But 10,000 years ago, it was green. Full of rivers, forests, and people. And in the heart of it all, the Rikat structure. The Eye of the Sahara. A massive, concentric geological anomaly. Mainstream science says it's natural. But others argue, it matches Plato's description of Atlantis. Down to the measurements. And satellite imagery shows signs of ancient rivers leading to its center. If true, then Atlantis wasn't a myth. It was a memory. And the cataclysm that swallowed it? Recorded in global myth as the flood. Almost every ancient culture has a flood story. Mesopotamia, India, China, the Maya, the Aboriginals of Australia. The names change, but the event remains. The gods grew angry. The earth trembled. The waters rose. But maybe the gods weren't angry. Maybe they were warning. Or maybe they were fleeing. What if the flood wasn't divine punishment, but ecological consequence? A pole shift, a comet strike, a solar flare, or all three? And what if some people knew in advance? Noah, Utnapishtim, Manu, Ziusadra. Every culture has a survivor. Chosen, told to build, told to prepare. But survive for what? To carry on a bloodline? Or to preserve a contract? Now let's return to the Mediterranean. To Santorini. 3,600 years ago, it erupted violently. The Minoan civilization was obliterated overnight. But here's what they don't tell you. Their scripts, linear A, remain undeciphered. Their palaces, aligned with solstices. Their art, full of sea creatures, spirals, and floating figures. Were they just merchants? Or custodians of something older? Something they inherited from survivors of the last fall? And the eruption? Was it random? Or part of the cycle? Because Earth has a cycle. Every 12,000 years, there are signs. Magnetic instability. Increased solar activity. Mass extinctions. And here's where it gets darker. Some researchers believe these events don't just reshape continents. They erase memory. Not metaphorically. Literally. Like a reboot. When magnetic fields collapse, the human brain, a magnetic system, struggles to retain long-term patterns. And if that's true, then our amnesia is not just historical. It's neurological. We were reset. But not clean. Because the ruins remain. The myths survive. The symbols return. Whispers in stone. Clues etched into mountain faces. Glyphs left in cave vaults no one can explain. What are they trying to tell us? That the end comes in fire? Or that fire is only the beginning? Now, to the Pacific. Nan Madol. An island of basalt columns built on a coral reef. No one knows how they moved the stone. No one knows who lived there. But local myth says it was built by twin sorcerers, who used song to raise the stones, and whose contract with the ocean gods eventually broke. The sea rose, and Nan Madol was swallowed. Again, the same pattern. Build, rise, break, sink, and always a pact. Which brings us to the biggest question. Are cataclysms random? Or are they the consequence of broken agreements? Did ancient civilizations enter into contracts with forces, call them gods, intelligences, cycles, and when those were violated, did the Earth answer? Because if the Earth is a sentient system, a memory-keeping, self-healing entity, then these cataclysms are not punishments. They are corrections. And we are the forgetful children who keep triggering them. But what if we could remember? Not just what was built, but why? Not just what was lost, but what it meant. Because beneath the ruins, beneath the soot and sediment and salt, are keys. Keys to what came before. and what may come again. This is not just history. This is a countdown to the next remembering, to the next reckoning, to the next choice. The ruins do not lie, but they do grow quiet until someone listens. And in that moment, the earth remembers. We walk atop their ruins. We live in cities whose foundations were not laid by us. We draw borders over lands once carved by hands now lost to time. But what if the builders never left? What if the ones who raised impossible monuments, who aligned temples to stars, who encoded numbers into megaliths, did not vanish, but simply went quiet? This is the story of the silent architects, of a lineage of knowledge, preserved in shadows, passed through mystery schools, through guilds, through whispers in stone. From the Andes to Angkor Wat, from the pyramids of Egypt to the underground cities of Turkey, the architectural fingerprints are uncannily familiar. It's not just the scale, not just the precision. It's the language, the mathematics of meaning, the geometry of intention. Civilizations separated by oceans and millennia should not have shared the same building codes. But they did. In Peru, the walls of Sacsayhuaman are laid with stones weighing over 100 tons. Cut so precisely, a knife cannot slip between them. In Japan, the megalithic site of Ishino-Hoden lies hidden in plain sight, carved from a single rock, floating in water. In Egypt, the Osirian at Abydos sits deeper than the surrounding temple, built with granite blocks too massive to explain, and architectural techniques absent from later dynasties. None of it makes sense if we follow the linear version of history. But it starts to make sense. If knowledge didn't evolve, it receded, and then returned. What if these sites weren't built independently, but as part of a global blueprint? A shared system, not of style, but of purpose? Let's talk about the alignments. Giza, Teotihuacan, Angkor Wat, Easter Island. These sites are aligned to each other, to solstices, equinoxes, galactic centers. Some alignments stretch thousands of miles, as if someone measured the Earth itself. Before modern instruments, before flight, before satellites. How? Why? And most importantly, who? Let's return to Göbekli Tepe, the oldest temple complex ever discovered, built 11,000 years ago, yet displaying cosmic knowledge, animal symbology, and high-order construction. But it wasn't just built. It was buried. Intentionally. To preserve it, to protect it, or to hide something. Every time an ancient site is unearthed, we're forced to revise the story. Yet the revisions only scratch the surface. We still teach the same linear myth. Caves, spears, farms, cities, phones. But what if there were interruptions? Resets? And with each reset, the builders returned. In silence. They didn't build for kings. They didn't build for ego. They built with purpose. Energetic, celestial, metaphysical. Structures that spoke to the sky and listened to the earth. Even today, the remnants whisper. Acoustic anomalies in pyramids, electromagnetic signatures in stone circles, vibration-resistant foundations that modern engineers still study. Why? Because these weren't just buildings. They were instruments, receivers, transmitters, resonators. Let's talk about the Coral Castle. Built in Florida in the 20th century by one man, Edward Leedskalnin. He moved and placed coral blocks weighing tons. Without cranes. Without teams. And he never revealed how. When asked, he said, "I discovered the secrets of the pyramids." Did he? Or did he remember something? Because the builders are not just in the past. Their knowledge leaks through the cracks of history. Through inventions lost and rediscovered. Through texts suppressed and retranslated. Through art mistaken as myth. We see it in the star maps of Aboriginal Australians. The chakra systems of Vedic India. The Fibonacci spirals encoded in cathedral rose windows. All of it points to something deeper. A sacred architecture of the soul. And here's where it gets stranger. Modern architects feel it. They speak of genius loci, the spirit of a place. They talk of flow, symmetry, sacred proportions. Even without knowing why, they return to the old rules. The builders left no signature. But they left symbols. The flower of life. The golden ratio. The octagon and the circle. You'll find them in temples. And also in airports. In Gothic cathedrals. And in NASA schematics. It's as if their language was embedded into the very logic of construction. Who were they? Atlanteans? Lemurians? Survivors of a forgotten epoch? Or simply humans? From an earlier, brighter age? One not of steel, but of stone and sky? Some believe the builders had help. That their silence wasn't secrecy, but obedience. To something older, wiser, and watching. Think of the watchers from the Book of Enoch. The Apkallu of Mesopotamia. The Viracocha of the Andes. The white-bearded sages who came from the sea. Bearing tools and knowledge. And then vanished. They never claimed to be gods. Only messengers. Architects. Contractors of a larger design. Maybe they didn't come to rule. Maybe they came to rebuild. To restart a pattern. A cycle. So what happened? Why did they stop? Or did they? In every major city, there are buildings that don't belong. Out-of-place architecture. Impossible techniques for their time. Stones that don't match local quarries. Lines that point to stars. The Vatican. Washington, D.C. London's Temple District. Jerusalem's Old Quarter. These cities are not random. They are layered. Engineered. Aligned. Not to each other, but to something else. A grid. A map of energy. A plan. And now, that plan is being uncovered. Not by archaeologists, but by dreamers, researchers, tinkerers, travelers. Those who feel the pull of the old places. The resonance. The echo. Of builders who never died. Just waited. Because maybe they knew this moment would come. Maybe the structures they left were not monuments, but messages. Maybe we're the ones meant to read them. To build again. Not in stone, but in spirit. Not temples, but truth. And maybe, just maybe, they're watching, waiting, for us to remember how to build. We began this journey searching for cities. Ghost cities. Lost beneath deserts, jungles, oceans. But what we found was far stranger. Not ruins, but memories made solid. Stone archives of a story that didn't end, only paused. They call them dead civilizations. They're not. They never were. Because dead things don't call back. In these places, they whisper. Every time a stone is uncovered, every time a chamber breathes air for the first time in 1,000 years, a message awakens. The message is not in the artifacts, not in the myths, not in the dust. It's in us. We feel it when we stand in front of structures too vast to comprehend, too old to explain, too precise to dismiss. We feel the chill, the pull, the knowing. Why do certain shapes resonate? Why do we walk into ancient spaces and fall silent? It's not reverence. It's recognition. Somewhere deep in the bones, we remember. The builders left no manuals, no monuments to their own names, because ego was not their purpose. Legacy was not their goal. Meaning was. Function was. Balance. Their cities were not chaos. They were code. Geometry as language. Structure as song. You don't have to believe in Atlantis or Lemuria to feel it, to sense that something larger once walked this earth. Not necessarily taller, but wider, wiser. A consciousness that flowed through stone, that carved cathedrals from cliffs, that whispered star charts into the ceilings of tombs, that knew how to anchor spirit into matter. We try to rebuild what we've lost, but we use the wrong tools. Steel instead of resonance, concrete instead of harmony, profit instead of purpose. And still, the echoes remain, buried beneath modern cities, locked behind politics, sanitized by textbooks, but still there, waiting. There's a reason the ancients warned of forgetting, of the flood that comes not with water, but with ignorance. The erasure not of land, but of memory. That's the true catastrophe. Not the fall of cities, but the silence that followed. The silence imposed. The silence enforced. Because knowledge is dangerous. Not because it harms, but because it frees. What happens if we remember? What happens if we start asking? Not how did they build this, but why? Why align the stars? Why carve sound into walls? Why encode ratios into temples? Unless it was all connected? Unless it all mattered? This isn't nostalgia. It's navigation. A way back. Not to the past, but to the blueprint beneath everything. You see, the builders weren't primitive, and they weren't superhuman. They were aligned with earth, with sky, with themselves. And that's what we forgot. We didn't just bury the cities. We buried the way of being that made them possible. A way that saw the body as a temple, the land as sacred geometry, the heavens as a mirror. Now, we live in dissonance. Glass towers rise, but they do not hum. We pave over rivers and wonder why the city feels sick. We light everything, but see nothing. But something is shifting. The old cities stir. The old lines reappear. People gather in the ruins, not for tourism, but for transmission. Something is being remembered. Maybe that's why you're here. Not just watching a video, but following a thread. Through dust, through stone, through centuries of silence. Not to be entertained, but to be initiated. Because the builders didn't leave behind history. They left instructions, encoded in myth, buried in grid lines, etched in sound, preserved in frequency. And if we can read them, really read them, then maybe we stop collapsing. Maybe we stop forgetting. Maybe we begin building again. Not just monuments, but meaning. Not just homes, but harmony. Not just cities, but civilizations that remember. So when you walk through a ruin next time, pause, touch the stone, close your eyes, and listen. Not with your ears, but with the part of you that remembers without words. Because these cities, they never died. They were waiting for us to come back, to ask the right question, to stand still, and finally hear the answer. This is not the end of the story. This is where it begins again.